My name is Serena Vo. I'm 28 years old. If you'd seen my life from the outside a few months ago, you probably would have said I had it together. Stable corporate job, tiny but decent apartment in the city, the kind of daughter who sends money home every month and never causes trouble. What you wouldn't have seen was how much of that life didn't really belong to me. It belonged to my family. My 20s weren't about backpacking through Europe or finding myself on some yoga retreat. They were about work, about saying yes to every overtime shift, every promotion, every side project, because every extra dollar had somewhere it needed to go. While my friends talked about saving for vacations, I was wiring money home to cover the electricity before it got shut off. When people joked about their parents wanting grandkids, mine wanted my login to their online banking. My mom floated between passion projects that always cost more than they made. My dad hadn't held a full-time job since I was in high school, and my older brother Min had become the family's walking lottery ticket, even though his startups never progressed past a Google Doc and a mood board. Every time one launched and died, someone had to clean it up. That someone was me. I kept telling myself this was what family did. We carry each other. We sacrifice. We step up. But somewhere along the way, stepping up had turned into lying down and letting everyone walk over me. It all came to a stop on a Tuesday. I remember the fluorescent office lighting more than anything, the way it flickered slightly in the corner of my vision while I stared at my screen. I'd skipped breakfast to finish a proposal, answering emails with one hand while holding a lukewarm coffee in the other. My calendar was a wall of back-to-back meetings. No breaks, no breathing room. Around noon, my fingers started trembling on the keyboard. At first, I thought it was just caffeine. I blinked hard at the monitor, but the words blurred and refused to come into focus. It felt like someone had taken the saturation slider of my vision and dragged it all the way down. "Serena, you good?" my coworker Colin asked from the desk across from mine. His voice sounded far away, like it was coming through water. "I'm fine," I tried to say. "Just need water." I reached for my bottle. My hand missed. The edge of the desk rushed up way too fast. Then, nothing. My next memory is sound, a high, constant beeping, and someone yelling my name like it was an emergency code. "Serena! Serena, stay with me!" Then cold air on my face and the sensation of being moved. Ceiling tiles sliding past above me like frames of a film. When I woke up properly, I was in a hospital bed, ICU. There were wires on my chest, a pulse oximeter on my finger, an IV in my arm. My tongue felt thick and dry. Every muscle in my body ached like I'd run a marathon I didn't sign up for. A nurse appeared in my blurry peripheral vision, gentle but efficient. "Hey there," she said softly. "You're in the hospital. You had a seizure at work. Do you remember anything?" I shook my head a little. Even that made my skull throb. "Ear doctors think it was triggered by stress, dehydration, and exhaustion," she continued. "We're keeping you for observation for a few days. Is there anyone you'd like us to call?" "Family?" I croaked. "My mom, my dad, my brother?" She nodded and took my phone from the bedside table where someone had placed it. "You listed them as your emergency contacts. We'll reach out and let them know what's going on." "Okay." I watched her step out into the hallway, my eyelids heavy. I heard parts of the conversation through the door. "Hi, this is Megan from Mercy General ICU. I'm calling about your daughter Serena." Voicemail. "Hi, this is a medical emergency regarding your daughter." Voicemail. "Hi, is this Men? I'm calling from the hospital about your sister." No answer. She came back in a few minutes later with a soft frown. "No one picked up yet," she said. "We left urgent messages. I'm sure they'll call back soon." I nodded, or tried to. My chest felt tight, but I told myself it was just the monitors and the weirdness of hospital air. Of course they'd call back. Of course they'd come. That's what family does. Hours passed. The light outside shifted from bright white to a warmer gold, then to the muted blue of late afternoon. Nurses came and went, checking lines, asking if I was in pain, adjusting machines that hummed and beeped. My coworkers texted the group chat little updates. Serena scared us today, but docs say she'll be okay. And someone sent a photo of the get well card they started on the break room table. My phone lay on the tray beside me, black screen, battery inching down, no missed calls. Around sunset, Colin appeared in the doorway, holding a plastic bag. He looked strangely big in the small room, his work badge still clipped to his belt. "Hey," he said, giving me a careful half smile. "I brought you real soup. The stuff downstairs tastes like regret." Emotion hit me so fast my eyes burned. "You didn't have to come," I rasped. He shrugged. "You scared the crap out of us. I figured I owed you at least some edible food and a phone charger." He sat both on the tray. "Your phone looked like it was on life support, too." We talked for a bit about nothing and everything until the nurse shed him out so I could rest. When he left, the room felt bigger and emptier than before. I finally picked up my phone. Battery at 2%. No calls from Mom, no calls from Dad, no calls from men. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, then tapped open my social media. Muscle memory, distraction, anything. At the top of my feed, a new photo sat mocking me. Mint had posted a picture at our family's lake house, the one we'd spent summers at as kids. He was in the center of the frame, drink held up like a trophy. Mom and Dad were next to him, smiling wide, arms around a cluster of neighbors and cousins I hadn't seen in months. The lake glowed behind them, golden orange in the evening light. He'd tagged me. The caption read, "Whole crew together, finally complete." I stared at those words, the machines around me beeping steadily, the plastic taste of oxygen in my mouth. Whole crew together, finally complete. They were all there. They were all together. And the hospital, with its antiseptic smell and flickering monitors, might as well have been on another planet. No one had noticed I was gone. No one had even thought to ask where I was. My thumb hovered over the comment box. I imagined typing something sarcastic, bitter, devastating. "Wish I could have made it, but I was busy having a seizure." Or, "Looks fun. I was in ICU, if anyone cares." But I already knew the script. They'd say they didn't see it, or they'd spin it as me being dramatic. Or worse, they'd ignore it completely, and I'd be left feeling smaller than before. So, I locked my phone and placed it face down. For the first time in my life, I chose silence. That night, one of my coworkers I barely talked to dropped off a care package. Clean t-shirt, face wipes, a stupid magazine. Another emailed HR to make sure my medical leave was sorted, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. People who knew me in passing were checking on me, making sure I had what I needed. My family, the ones I'd been breaking myself to support, stayed silent. Day turned into night, night into another day. I did breathing treatments. I forced down bland hospital food. I tried not to flinch when the heart monitor beeped faster than it should. Every time the nurse came in, she checked the chart, not my phone. On day 5, my phone buzzed so violently on the tray that it woke me from a shallow sleep. I grabbed it, pulse spiking. 50 missed calls, most from my mom, some from Dad, 2 from men, both made after midnight. My heart surged with a flicker of hope. Maybe they'd finally realized what happened. Maybe they were worried. Until I saw the new message that had triggered the storm. It was from my mother. 4 words. "We need your help. Answer immediately." No. "How are you?" No. "Are you okay?" No. "We heard you were in the hospital. Just need..." I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before I hit call. She picked up on the first ring. "Serena," she said breathless, as if she'd been running. "Finally, we've been trying to reach you for days." "I was in the ICU," I said, voice flat. I collapsed at work. There was a pause, barely half a second. Then she barreled on. "Listen, this is urgent," she said. "Your brother's car finally died. It's a disaster. But there is this blessing. One of your dad's friends is selling his SUV. Very good condition. We need $11,000 today before he sells it to someone else." I waited for her to ask how I was. She didn't. "You're still working, right?" she added. "You have savings. You always plan ahead. We can't let men lose this opportunity. We'll pay you back, of course, when things are better." I looked down at the IV in my arm, the bruises on the back of my hand, the red imprint of the heart monitor stickers on my chest. They had ignored emergency calls from the hospital. They had tagged me in a lake house photo captioned, "Finally complete," while I lay hooked to machines. And now, the first time they bothered to reach me, it was because my brother needed a new car. Something inside me went very, very still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain or defend or plead. I simply moved the phone away from my ear and hung up. For the first time in my life, the silence between me and my family didn't feel like punishment. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. The irony was that I didn't set out to punish anyone. Not at first. After I hung up on my mother's demand for $11,000, the ICU monitors still beeping steadily around me. All I wanted was space. Space to breathe. Space to not feel like a human wallet strapped to a hospital bed. Space to understand how the people I had spent my entire adult life supporting couldn't even pick up the phone long enough to ask, "Are you alive?" But silence, I learned quickly, has a sound, and mine was deafening to them. Because the moment I stopped responding, their panic began. 3 days of non-stop calls, not out of concern, out of desperation. A ringing phone that vibrated across my nightstand like it wanted to claw back into my life. Missed calls, voicemails, paragraph-long texts, subject lines in all caps from my mother like she was emailing HR instead of her daughter. "Urgent, important call now! Michael's future." Michael being men in their world. In mine, he was the center of the entitlement galaxy. None of them asked, "How are you feeling? Did the doctor say anything?" All of them asked for money. Each voicemail followed the same progression, like a carefully rehearsed script. First, the guilt. "Family always helps each other. Serena, you know this." Then, pressure. "We need this today. You can't do this to your brother." Then, passive-aggressive martyrdom. "I don't know where we went wrong raising you. We taught you better than to abandon us." Abandon. That word repeated so many times it lost its meaning. They hadn't visited me once while I lay hooked to machines, but sure, I was the one doing the abandoning. By the time I was discharged, I had saved all the voicemails in a folder named Receipts. Another folder was labeled Reality. In it were the screenshots of Min's lake house post, the same post he tagged me in while I was unconscious in the ICU. The caption burned into my brain. "Whole crew together, finally complete." Complete without me. But somehow, I was the glue that held their budget together. At home, I was still dizzy, still weak, still moving slow. Twice, I had to crawl to the bathroom because standing made my vision go black at the edges. My fridge was empty except for electrolyte drinks the nurse told me to buy. I sat on my couch with a blanket around my shoulders, listening to voicemail after voicemail. My dad's voice blending with my mom's, blending with men's. Not one of them asked what happened at the hospital. Not a single one. I didn't respond. And it was incredible how fast the loving family tone disappeared when their demands hit a wall. 5 days after discharge, the voicemail that broke something in me arrived. It was from my father, normally the softer one, the one who used to pick me up from school with snacks in the passenger seat, who once stayed up until 3 a.m. helping me finish a science project he barely understood. But this version of him, the one speaking into my voicemail, was not that dad. His voice was sharp, disappointed. "We raised you better than this, Serena. I don't know what's gotten into you. We've always supported you. This is how you repay us." Supported, he said. Supported. As if years of second jobs and side gigs and skipped meals and drained savings were somehow them supporting me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't reply. I just sat there in my tiny living room, air humming with the memory of ICU machines, and realized something huge. My silence wasn't cruelty. It was the first boundary they'd ever been forced to recognize, and they couldn't stand it. I didn't hear a word from them for 10 days. 10 blissful days where my phone was quiet, my apartment was still, and I could focus on healing instead of drowning. Then came the call that detonated everything. It was from Aunt Linda, Dad's older sister, the one person in the family who never took sides, never meddled, never played favorites. She kept her distance from drama the way some people avoid gluten, strictly by principle. So when her name lit up on my screen, I answered. "Serena," she said, her voice calm but troubled. "I need to tell you something." She'd been at Min's birthday gathering. A big turnout at, of course, the lake house. The same lake house from the Instagram photo that cut me open while I was lying in an ICU bed. "They got him a car," she said. "Not the Lexus men originally wanted, but something close. A used Audi." My stomach tightened. "Do you know how they paid for it?" "I was told nothing," she admitted, "but something felt off." Of course it did. My mother has tells. Financial lies make her talk fast and smile too big. But that wasn't the worst of it. Aunt Linda took a slow breath. "Your mother told everyone that you cut off the family over a little disagreement, that you abandoned them without explanation, that you're going through some emotional phase. There was no mention of the hospital." My throat burned, but she wasn't done. Then Em stood up to toast, she said, voice shaking with disgust. "To the people who show up when it counts," he said, "not the ones who pretend to care when it's convenient." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because of the seizure this time, because the betrayal was deeper than anything I'd imagined. I had spent years funding that man's failures, and now he was rewriting history to paint me as the villain, as the selfish sibling who stopped caring. They laughed, she finished. "Everyone except me," she paused, then added softly, "It made me sick." And I realized they've built a fantasy version of reality where men is the golden child and you're the afterthought. And they really believe it. I sat perfectly still. Something inside me, something that had been cracking slowly, gently over months, finally snapped clean down the middle. Not with rage, with clarity. This wasn't family. This was extraction, a system that drained me dry and called it love. I thanked her for calling, hung up, sat in the quiet of my apartment. Then I got to work. People think breaking points are loud, dramatic, explosive. Mine was silent, almost gentle. The apartment my brother lived in, mine, bought with my first big bonus because I'd wanted him to have a safe place after his roommate drama. I'd let him stay rent-free. He paid nothing, not even the water bill. Every time I asked, there was a new excuse, a new startup, a new timeline for when he'd finally get back on his feet. That night, I called my lawyer, filed an official eviction notice, had it posted on his door before noon the next day. No discussion, no warning, no negotiation. Just done. Then I closed every joint account they'd ever touched. The emergency fund that Mom dipped into to book vacations she pretended were business research trips. The temporary line of credit I'd opened for Dad to cover golf club dues he'd lied about. The debit card Min used as his personal ATM. All gone. Within hours, the fallout began. Mom called, sobbing, then screaming, then pleading. "You're tearing the family apart. You're acting like a stranger. This isn't you, Serena." But she wasn't crying because she was worried about me. She was crying because I'd turned off the faucet. And I wasn't done. For years, they had been telling a version of the story where I was the quiet one, the helper, the fallback plan. But the moment I stopped playing the part they'd written for me, I became the villain. Fine. Then they would learn what the villain looked like when she finally stopped being useful. The first message after the eviction wasn't from Min. It was from my aunt, Aunt May, my mother's sister. The same woman who hadn't spoken to me in almost 4 years, unless you counted yearly mass texts that read, "Merry Christmas, fam." Her text arrived at 7:14 p.m., an hour after Min found the eviction notice taped to his door. Aunt May: "Hi, sweetheart. I heard things are tense right now. Your mom fainted from stress. She's being monitored for her heart. Maybe this isn't the best time to add more pressure." There it was, the guilt grenade. Funny how no one fainted from stress when I nearly died in the ICU. I didn't respond. She followed up 4 times in the next 10 minutes. Each message another layer of emotional manipulation dressed up as concern. But by then, I'd learned a simple truth. Silence is its own kind of answer, and it terrified them. The next hit came from social media. Someone sent me a link to my mother's Facebook page, something I normally never checked. When I opened it, I felt my stomach turn. She'd posted a long, dramatic paragraph about losing your child emotionally, about sons who forget their mothers, about family betrayal. Not a single detail about why, not a mention of the hospital, no acknowledgement of the years of financial support, just a vague, manipulative soba story that encouraged strangers to fill in the blanks. And they did. The comment section was a chorus of sympathy. "You don't deserve this. Kids these days have no gratitude. Stay strong, mama. God sees your pain." Then Min added a comment that nearly made me throw my phone. "People make choices. We'll be fine without him. Always have been." Always have been. They had abandoned me for days while I was unconscious, then pretended they'd been fine without me all along. That was the moment something inside me shifted from hurt to resolve. I screenshotted every post, every comment, every lie, filed them away. Evidence, not for revenge, for truth. Truth they were about to choke on. I wasn't expecting validation from anyone, so when Aunt Linda called me again, I answered with caution. But she was firm, steady, and angrier than I'd ever heard her. "Your mother is spinning a story," she said, "but not everyone is falling for it. Some of us know better, and we've known better for a long time." It was only then she admitted something I never knew. I wasn't the only one they drained. Min had borrowed money from half the family at some point. Dad had asked relatives for short-term loans that were never repaid. Mom had a habit of promising to pay people back when things get better. The problem was, things never got better. They just got louder. "You're the only one who kept helping," Aunt Linda said, her voice gentle but pained. "And because you kept saying yes, they kept expecting you to." Then she said the thing I'd been avoiding. "This isn't the first time they've done this. It's just the first time someone said no." I didn't cry, but something heavy moved in my chest, settling into place. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was refusing to be used. And that was the difference they could not comprehend. With the eviction posted and the accounts closed, I thought, maybe they'd back off. I was wrong, because men began a new phase. Anger, with a hint of entitlement. He texted me a photo of the eviction notice. The paper crumpled like someone had tried to rip it off the door in rage. Across it in marker, he'd scrolled, "You've got serious issues. Hope you're proud of this." I didn't reply, not out of spite, out of exhaustion. But the real tipping point came 3 hours later when I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was my mother. Voice trembling, overly breathy, performative. "Serena, your brother is devastated. Your father is beside himself. I fainted earlier from the stress. Everyone is so worried about you. This isn't like you. Please, we need to talk. The family needs healing." Healing from what? From losing access to my bank account? I was still recovering from a seizure, still weak, still trying to piece my life back together, and they wanted healing. Healing to them meant me giving in. Healing meant financial submission, wrapped in the language of family bonds. Healing meant me returning to my role as the emotional and financial cushion. I deleted the voicemail, and for the first time in my life, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like oxygen. But then, right when I thought I was maybe being too harsh, maybe becoming exactly what they accused me of, a friend DM'd me a new Facebook post from my mother. A photo of her in a hospital gown. Caption: "Stress can break the strongest heart. Pray for us." Except the hospital gown photo. I recognized it. It wasn't from today or yesterday. It was from 3 years earlier when she'd had a minor outpatient procedure and sent a selfie to the family group chat afterwards, saying, "All good, going to Olive Garden to celebrate." She was using an old photo to fake a health crisis to manipulate public sympathy. That was when something in me snapped cleanly. They wanted drama. They wanted sympathy. They wanted attention. Fine, I'd give them truth. And truth hits harder than any performance. From that moment forward, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Not for revenge, not for spite, for closure. Real closure, the kind they couldn't distort or overwrite because they wanted to rewrite the story. But I was the one holding the pen. Now, if I had known what was coming next, I might have taken a moment to brace myself. But part of growing up in a dysfunctional family is learning that every quiet moment is just the pause before the next explosion. And this explosion shook everything loose. It began with a question I never imagined I'd ask myself. What if I'm not the only one they've taken from? Aunt Linda had hinted as much. My mother's dramatic lies on Facebook confirmed it. Men's entitlement proved it. And their collective panic, their need to rewrite the narrative, told me they knew something was coming. So, I started digging. Not out of rage, out of necessity, out of self-defense, out of a very specific type of exhaustion that eventually becomes clarity. I opened old emails, bank statements, text threads, wire transfers, screenshots, promissory messages sweetened with empty promises of, "We'll pay you back when things are better." I organized everything into folders. There were 63 transfers from the last 10 years. Utilities, bailouts, rent, car repairs, business expenses for startups that never started, medical bills that mysteriously never cured anything. $12,864.52. I stared at that total. 10 years of choosing family over myself. 10 years of saying yes because saying no felt like betrayal. 10 years of being molded into the role they preferred for me, the responsible one, the provider, the silent one, until the silence finally served me instead of them. Once I had the total, I did the most un-Asian child, un-eldest, daughter-coded thing imaginable. I called my lawyer. "Can we formalize this?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "We can." We drafted a formal repayment demand. Not emotional, not personal. Legal, documented, undeniable. With the receipts attached, it wasn't revenge. It was accountability. I mailed it certified and waited because I already knew the pattern. Silence, shock, outrage. Then the performance. And right on cue, the performance began. It started with a meltdown on Facebook. My mother posted a long paragraph about betrayal, financial cruelty, and her favorite, losing a child to bitterness. She called the repayment notice a vicious attack and claimed I was mentally unstable after a breakdown. Never mind that I'd collapsed in a corporate office, not a psychiatric ward. The comment section lit up again. "So heartbreaking. I'm praying for your family. Kids these days have no respect. You didn't deserve this." Then Min added another dagger. "She made her choice. We'll survive without her. We always have." But this time, the lie didn't land the way they hoped. Because someone else was watching, Aunt Linda, and she wasn't quiet anymore. Underneath their post, she commented, "Tell the whole story. Tell them Serena was in the ICU for 5 days, and you ignored the hospital's calls." The comments froze, then exploded. People demanded answers. Mom gave none, but the pressure was building. The next hit wasn't digital. It knocked on my door, literally. When I opened it, Uncle Rick stood there, a man I hadn't seen in years. The so-called black sheep of the family. Except he didn't look like a black sheep. He looked like someone who had been waiting for the truth to surface. Without speaking, he handed me a thick folder. Inside were documents, loan applications, auto financing forms, and right there, printed in ugly, uneven handwriting, my name, my address, my signature forged next to Men's. He used my old pay subs, my financial info, my credit history. He consigned a car loan under my name without me. The payments were already 2 months behind. My chest went cold. "If the bank comes after you," Uncle Rick said quietly, "you deserve to know why." He explained that Mom and Dad had done something similar to him years ago, used his name temporarily, swore they'd fix it until it spiraled so badly he had to cut them off to save himself. "You aren't crazy, Serena," he said. "You're just the last one left who hadn't caught on yet." I sat down slowly. Fraud. Actual fraud. Not just emotional manipulation. Not just financial dependence. Not just guilt. Criminal. And they'd tried to keep it hidden, expecting me to absorb the blow the way I always had. That night, I emailed my lawyer again. We added a new case. Part of me expected them to deny everything, but instead, the opposite happened. A meltdown so loud the entire extended family heard it. Mom posted a photo of herself in a hospital bed, an old photo, claiming she had stress-induced chest pains due to betrayal. Someone else exposed the lie. The comments turned brutal. Min posted a shaky video insisting I was ruining his life. Someone replied with the actual loan documents attached. Dad wrote a cryptic message about children destroying families, and the replies were filled with screenshots of my hospital visit and the lake house photo. Their narrative was collapsing under the weight of its own lies. And then came Min's call. A new number, a new tactic, the same old entitlement. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "You were always the one who saved us. What's wrong with you? What changed?" I almost laughed. "What changed?" I collapsed. "You didn't show up. I survived anyway. I stopped paying for you. You noticed. That's what changed. You have 5 days to get your things out of the apartment," I said. "After that, you're trespassing." "You can't do this," he snapped. "I already did." He hung up. 3 hours later, Mom started calling people, claiming I'd lost it mentally. I knew she was desperate because she called a girl I hadn't spoken to since high school to check on me. But a funny thing happens when someone tries to gaslight an entire community. The truth finds its own voice. Sam, an old friend from college, decided he was done watching the circus. He posted everything. Every screenshot I'd shared, every bank transfer, the forged documents, the lake house photo from the week of my collapse, the Facebook lies, everything. No commentary, just facts. It went semi-viral within our community. The next day, Mom deleted her account. Dad locked his. Min turned off comments. Meanwhile, I turned off my phone, pulled a blanket over my legs, and breathed fully for the first time in years. Not out of victory, out of release. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. It happened on a quiet Thursday afternoon. A knock on my door. A woman stood there, holding a little boy's hand. "Are you Serena?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Ellie," she said, "and this is Min's son." I felt the air go out of my lungs. Min had a child. No one told me. Of course, no one told me. She explained everything in slow, exhausted detail. She left Min a year ago because of his lies. He recently reappeared, claiming I was ruining his life, begging her to help. She thought it sounded suspicious. So she started digging online, found the Facebook meltdown, found Sam's post, found the documents. I'm not here to take anything from you, she said, voice steady. I just want you to know that if this goes to court, I'll testify. People need to stop enabling him. I thanked her. After she left, I called my lawyer. The cases moved faster than expected. 5 days before the repayment deadline, their lawyer, an exhausted man with a forced, polite tone, called to negotiate. He offered a formal apology, a promise to try harder as a family, and asked if we would consider dropping the lawsuits. I didn't even hesitate. No, I said. We're moving forward. A week later, the court date was set. That was when they broke completely. Their lawyer called again. We can repay the full amount, he said reluctantly. If your client agrees to sign a confidentiality agreement, I agreed with one condition. Min had to sign a written confession about the fraud. It wouldn't be filed unless they violated the agreement again, but it would exist. A permanent reminder. 2 days later, they signed and the money hit my account. Suddenly, the people who had drained me for 13 years could no longer touch me. My silence was no longer their leverage. It was my shield. I changed my phone number, closed every account, updated every emergency contact, told HR to remove my family from any documentation, cut the last emotional tie that had chained me to caretaking since I was 18, and I didn't look back. A month later, Aunt Linda called to tell me the final update. My parents had lost their house. Min's credit was ruined. The used Audi was repossessed. No one wanted to co-sign his next scheme. Their GoFundMe closed at $83 from 3 donors, 2 of which had suspiciously similar names to my mother's cousins. They couldn't rebuild a fantasy when everyone finally knew the truth. And they couldn't reach me because there was nothing left to take. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their provider. I wasn't their backup plan. I wasn't their silent safety net. I was just Serena. And that was more than enough. When the lawsuits closed, the repayments landed, and the confession was signed, I expected something inside me to explode. Rage, triumph, grief, vindication. I expected a movie moment, a dramatic release after years of holding everything in. But what I felt was much quieter, like someone had finally lifted their knee off my chest. My apartment, once cramped with obligations I'd never chosen, suddenly felt like mine for the first time. I bought a plant, a big one, something green and alive that didn't need me to rescue it, only water it occasionally. I rearranged my furniture. I slept a full 8 hours without waking to phantom phone vibrations. The silence that used to terrify me now felt like oxygen. But peace isn't the end of a story like mine. Sometimes peace is the start of understanding everything you missed while you were surviving. 3 weeks after the dust settled, my Aunt Linda invited me to dinner at her place. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken, rice, and steamed vegetables. But it felt like a ceremony, like someone was welcoming me back into a part of the family that wasn't built on expectations and emotional manipulation. Uncle Rick came too, carrying another box of paperwork just in case my parents tried anything else. He treated it casually, like handing someone extra batteries, but I understood the gesture. This man, who my family had painted as unstable and dramatic, was the only one who had shown up to protect me before my collapse. Over dinner, Aunt Linda told stories I'd never heard. About the time my parents took money from her emergency fund temporarily and never repaid it. About how Min had stolen a check from our grandmother's purse and forged her signature. About the many times my parents praised Min to the heavens while treating me like I was invisible unless they needed something. You weren't their daughter, she said gently. You were their lifeline, and lifelines get used until they snap. I didn't cry. Not then. I just listened. Because when someone speaks the truth you've buried for years, sometimes all you can do is sit very still and let it settle. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the preview caught my eye. Serena, it's Dad. Please read. My pulse flickered, but I opened it. Dad, I know you don't want to hear from us. You have every right. We messed up. We lost our way. Your mother is not handling this well. None of us are. We shouldn't have taken advantage. We shouldn't have used your name without asking. I'm sorry. There were no excuses in the message, no emotional manipulation, no sudden emergencies, just the closest thing to accountability I'd ever seen from him. But apologies don't erase patterns, they don't fix years of damage, and they don't rebuild trust that was never allowed to grow in the first place. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, because the person he was apologizing for, the version of me who would have dropped everything, forgiven instantly, sent money immediately, that woman no longer existed. I set the phone down and walked away from it, letting the notification fade into the lock screen like a forgotten echo. I started therapy, not because I felt broken, because I finally understood I'd never been allowed the space to feel anything at all. My therapist asked me why I stayed so long, why I gave so much, why I'd collapsed before I ever said the word no. I told her the truth. When you're raised to be the stable one, you don't realize you're drowning. You just call it being strong. She nodded and wrote something down. I think you finally learned the difference between helping and enabling, she said, and the difference between love and obligation. That sentence stayed with me for weeks. People in my life began to notice the changes. Colin, my coworker, the one who brought soup to the ICU, became my unofficial emergency contact at work. He'd check in once in a while, not out of pity, but out of genuine care. One afternoon, while walking back from lunch, he said quietly, "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter," I answered honestly. He nodded. "That whole situation, it didn't break you. It just showed you who was worth saving." I didn't respond, but I felt the truth of it settle somewhere deep. Another month passed before the final ripple hit. A package arrived on my door with no return label. Inside was a thick envelope and a smaller one taped to the top that said simply, "For you, no pressure." It was from Ellie, the woman who'd shown up at my door with Min's son. Inside the large envelope were copies of more documents, evidence of lies Min had told her, unpaid child support, bad checks, screenshots of his manipulations. On top was a handwritten note. "I know you're trying to move on. I just wanted you to have the full truth. You didn't imagine any of it. Please don't ever let them pull you back in." I sat on my couch holding the letter, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and grief. Because Ellie was right. The most dangerous part of leaving a toxic family isn't the escape. It's the temptation to go back and rescue the people who broke you. But I wasn't going back. Not this time. Not ever. The last piece of this story came in the form of a phone call from my Aunt Linda. "Your parents moved into a rental," she said. "They're keeping to themselves. Michael, well, he's in between places again. They're all quiet now." Quietness in my family was unusual, not peaceful, strategic, like they were waiting for me to reach out. But I didn't. She hesitated, then added, "They finally understand you're not coming back to fix things." Her voice softened. "And Serena, that's not cruelty, that's survival." I thanked her and hung up. Then I walked to my balcony, the early evening breeze brushing my skin, the city humming beneath me. For the first time in 30 years, I felt the world without a weight on my shoulders. The past was behind me. The fight was over. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was freedom. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't holding my family together. I was holding myself.